So thank you very much. So it's a question I'm really interested in. As you said, I'm newly arrived in Kenya because I spent the last 4 years in Israel, which, if anyone who's been there, is a deeply unpromising country in many ways as an agricultural nation. It's over 50% desert. It has massive water shortage, very limited amount of land, and sort of whole host, and is in a region very heavily affected by climate change. And yet Israel is a very significant agriculture exporter, including to countries like the UK. It's a big exporter of agricultural technology, including here in Africa, and it's developed a very strong climate tech sector with over 500 startups active in that sector, which are generating billions of dollars of investment, hundreds of millions of dollars of exports, and thousands of jobs. And so when I came to Kenya, I was really struck by finding a great, and in Israel, that's been very much led by a depth of scientific research, specialist institutions and general universities, which put a huge amount of effort into basic research. And Israel spends about 5% of GDP a year on research and development. And that hasn't really been driven by the government. It's been driven by a tradition of scientific excellence with an enabling environment supported by the government. And coming to Kenya, I was very struck by similarities. So you have the same very wide range of geographies, of microclimates, and the opportunities that brings. You have some internationally renowned research institutes with very deep traditions of international cooperation, including in the UK. And you have a clearly very growing and vibrant tech sector. So it feels to me that a lot of the potential that I see in countries like Kenya is very acute. And I think there are 4 things that a government like mine, like the UK, can do to support that. So the first area is around financing, clearly, where the UK government has committed to providing almost £12 billion worth of climate finance. That's about $15 billion, depending on the exchange rate at any one time, to help support mitigation and adaptation, but with a very strong emphasis on evidence, on research, and on building local systems which can develop their capability to tackle climate change. The second area is around international cooperation in science and innovation. And a good example of this was after the COP26 summit in Glasgow, we launched the Global Partnership to Net Zero to develop methodologies to bring together scientific research and citizens' engagement to tackle climate policy challenges together. And here, as I talked about before, we see a huge opportunity around climate-smart agriculture, which could show huge both climate change benefits, but also great economic benefits to countries like Kenya. Thirdly, support for research and development that includes cross-border cooperation. So in the UK, we are raising our own research and development efforts to around £20 billion annually, but we're investing heavily in international cooperation. So, for example, you talked about evidence in the question. So we have set up an evidence fund which supports the generation of context-specific evidence for development in East, West, and Southern African countries. And finally, of course, we need to invest heavily in developing research systems of the kind that I talked about here in Kenya. So here we have set up a £20 million Strengthening Research Institutions in Africa scheme, which enables to build research capability, to support the recruitment and retention of high-quality researchers, and to encourage more balanced and equal partnerships between northern and southern researchers to address the kind of equity that you talked about. So I think this is a really important topic. I think it's really important that this summit focused on African leadership and partnership on this important debate, that you've put the importance of science, innovation, and research and development really at front and center of how Africa will respond to those challenges and work internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency.